With Destiny in the state that it's in currently, I think this is a very important thing to show a lot of people. I know a lot of people don't normally care about slideshows, but this comes directly from the general manager of Destiny 2, Justin Truman. You've seen this guy in a lot of Vidocs and whatnot. He has 12 years of experience on working on Destiny over at Bungie. So I've read over this about 3 times. It's like 80 slides long, so to spare you to the most important points possible, Bungie was at its lowest point ever. Back in Curse of Osiris, the game was 5 weeks away from closing its doors. Destiny could have been gone. It was 5 weeks away from being dead because of how bad the daily active users were back in February of 2018. And then they talk about fast forward 4 years and they're on the most successful year ever, which is 2022. I know a lot of players don't see it that way, but success for them is a very different definition from what players look at success-wise for the game. They go on to talk about switching from the box mindset to the service mindset. So the box mindset was like Halo. You make a perfect, polished, pretty game that is perfect right out of the gate. You do your absolute best. You crunch until you release this perfect, polished product. And then they talk about when they released Destiny, the ratings that they were getting were nothing like Halo, and they finally started to receive some criticism on different aspects of the game, and that's something that they weren't used to. So when Destiny had originally launched and they talked about having the criticism that they weren't used to, they didn't realize that Destiny was a success in the ways that mattered. You can fix your reviews, your sentiment, fix your sales as long as you have engagement and you have a community of players who care and are passionate about your game. So the way that they used to make games is they used to hire the best talent, let them use their creative gut, make the best game possible, use their Halo-sized marketing push, and trust that the game will just explode. And the studio motto for a very long time was, we make games we want to play. We believe that when you trust your gut and make something awesome, making something that you can't wait to play, that all different forms of success you might want, critical acclaim, sales, engaged players, will just flow naturally and intuitively from that. And this picture is now old and grainy. It's a picture I found on my cell phone because we took that motto down a little while after D2 launch as we evolved our view of what success meant. And the new motto is, we create worlds that inspire friendship. So this is talking about that shift from the box product mindset to a service mindset. Justin goes on to talk about how they shifted from the box product mindset to the service mindset. He's not knocking the box product mindset, again, where you try and make something super polished. It comes out with a big release. The marketing blows everything out the door. And examples of the box product mindset that they use were like Elden Ring, Tsushima, The Last of Us, and there's a ton of other examples that would go in that category. So then he follows that up with, he's going to explain more about what the service mindset is all about. And the biggest thing that he emphasizes is it's about being fast. Okay, so getting to the most important part, explaining the live service mindset, because obviously Destiny is a live service game. More important than even quality, a live service is about being fast. And I know what you guys are probably thinking to yourself is that it's pretty ironic because of the pace that Bungie runs at with some of their patches and some of the game-breaking bugs that go months without being fixed. They said back in 2010 you could make a long-lasting, high-retention game by just having something super high-quality, well-balanced, and unchanged that players kept coming back for years and years. It's not even back in 2010. It's still true today. But the standard of the market, in my opinion, has gone up so much because there's so much more competition. To say that, like, players won't come back to a game that is very high quality and high retention because it is high quality is just ignorant. You are blind to your own industry. To stay afloat in the service industry today, you need to be constantly feeding your players, responding to their concerns, and making the game better. If box products are in the business of over-delivery, live service is the business of constant delivery. And to provide that constant delivery to your players, you need to be fast as you can possibly be. And so at Bungie, one of the key lessons we confided here to shift our mindset is that velocity is more important than position. Your position is your game's quality. How good is it? What issues does it have? What content does it have to engage your players? And these are all important, but so much more important is how fast can you change that position? If your players need content, how fast can you get in the game? If your players have an unbalanced meta, how long does it take? Or how long does it stay unbalanced? If your community has a valid complaint, how quickly can you respond? And this is why in this important but unintuitive way, I'd rather have fast than perfect. Because being perfect or even great in your current position, but fast is your velocity, a fast game will become great, but a great slow game will quickly fall behind. In these next paragraphs, they talk about, again, why velocity is so important, how good is, or how relevant is the game 12 months later, and every game is going to suck at launch. This is not true. He's trying to make comparisons between games that are live service, which are so far and few in between, and those AAA box whatever games. Not every game that comes out is trying to do what Destiny's doing, and that's the thing I don't think they realize. Do they probably want to do it because it's more profitable? Yes. But there are still studios who get more satisfaction from creating games that are polished on launch, and then they just move on to the next product. Not everybody wants to adopt your model of sucking the wallets out of everybody because you want to force microtransactions down their throat 24/7. No new game iterated on secret for however many years can beat the existing live services that have been iterating directly with their communities for the last 5-10 years. You can't win that battle on day one. Yes, that's obvious. Who are they talking about? What live service games have been around for 5 to 10 years? Destiny and Warframe. That's probably about it. Fortnite, barely. Fortnite just crossed into that 5-year threshold. But if you're focused on your velocity, not your position at launch, the better challenge is how fast can you improve your game once you're in direct dialogue with your community. This is true to some degree, but the thing that really sets companies apart and causes things to explode is being different. And the only way you can be different is by putting your all into a game at launch. Think about Fortnite. The game was not like perfect at launch, but they put their all into it. They really did. Fortnite was really good at launch. Again, I'm just using it for the sake of example. And it continued to improve. So they are right to some degree. But to say that it's only about velocity, I just don't think is true. I don't run a hundreds of millions of dollars game, but like, I don't know, man. It's so different from the player's perspective. It really is. Justin then goes on to talk about redefining success. Why do you go to work every day? For us at Bungie, it means being perfect, or it used to mean being perfect, being impeccable, uncriticizable, and that's all part of that box product mindset, but now we're about being fast. And I think this is truly ironic, and I could not grasp this, because if I remember correctly, part of the reason that Bungie wanted to split from Activision is because Activision made them crunch deadlines. Since they have parted from Activision, they have stayed with the same seasonal model for 3 years. I think also part of the reason that Activision it was kind of like a mutual thing is because Bungie wasn't meeting the profitability quota that Activision has the high standards possible. It's crazy. Let's look what happened. Destiny. 3 years in. Destiny 2. If Destiny 3 would have been here, where do you think the popularity of Destiny would have been? Probably like here. If we're just using rough estimates, right? Activision isn't stupid. They're one of the most profitable game industries in the world. But they know how to make money. They know how to be a business. And last time I checked, people are loving Warzone and Modern Warfare 2 right now. This is also continuing on like redefining success. The first tangible example with their terrifying moment 2018, Curse of Osiris, lowest daily active users 5 weeks from closing. At the time, living through it felt like a real life version of FTL. If your engine room is on fire and your oxygen is straining through the hull breach and your shields are down, what is the most important to fix first? It's a good analogy to use with D2, and I've talked about this before. It's like you have all these problems with the game. What is the most critical thing to fix first? It's a very smart way to look about it. And the thing that they came up with in that difficult year was first player trust, then retention, then revenue. So we assumed when we launched or built Destiny 2, when players ran out of content, they would happily leave and come back. To their surprise, people stuck around with their megaphones shouting that the game sucked. This is especially bad with streamers, because we had literally hurt their livelihood by making Destiny a significantly less viable profession, so they would loudly and understandably shout their complaints to every viewer. This is also a dual-edged sword, and this is a very, very shitty point. It's very targeted and twisted into something that is not even the full truth. And the reason I don't like this is because your streamers and your content creators also do you a service, and you do not point that out. They outreach to hundreds of thousands of people when your game is good and sell it to those people. Because word of mouth is the strongest way to sell something. And they know that. You can ask anybody in marketing and they will tell you that. The first trust battle took almost a full year, and that's when we did stuff like remove all the microtransactions from some of our releases, taking multi-million-dollar losses in the process, because the risk of us losing trust was much worse at the time than the known loss in revenue. This is also, I don't like this, and I'll tell you why. When you tell me, remember we're on slide 41, you had literally just talked about how your studio or Destiny 2 was 5 weeks away from having to close its doors because it was performing so poorly. So you cannot sit and tell me it was a choice. You cannot sit and tell me it was a choice to get rid of microtransactions and take a multi-million-dollar loss. You didn't have a choice. The only choice you had was to build back the trust of the community. If the game is so close to failing, there is no option there. It's either you continue what you're doing and your game dies, or you turn it around. And you knew that the biggest catalyst, or one of the biggest catalysts of that, of losing the trust of your players, was forcing microtransactions down their throat. It's the same problem with a lot of other games. You overpush microtransactions, people don't like that. The reason we were able to eat that revenue loss is because we knew revenue was not our goal yet. Trust was, revenue can come later. Next thing they wanted to focus on was retention. So again, part of that 3-step process. Forsaken's product focus was to fix the end game, fix the retention, ensure there's plenty of long-term pursuits and content for Destiny 2 for most of our hardcore players. I can comfortably say this was a success on all cylinders. Forsaken has blown anything out of the water that we've ever seen, and I don't know if we'll ever see anything like it ever again. Forsaken launched 1 year in, our brand trust was back on track, and our retention had recovered from the precipitous drop after D2 launch. This is a very bold claim though. Retention had recovered. Just because you get the attention back for this little bit of time doesn't mean it's going to stay there. It's about sustainability. So next in line was the revenue conversation, and they had to redesign the revenue innovation, and they wanted it to be player wins, but they wanted it to be built off a foundation of trust and retention. So when they started charting the course for this new revenue system, they wanted to get rid of loot boxes and move to direct purchase and add a free-to-play entry point into the game. Okay, so they kind of go on to talk about these KPI report cards where they measure a bunch of different statistics on like what's performing good in the game, like expansion revenue, microtransactions, daily active users, new players, weekly return rate, average weekly win back, and they explain all those things. I don't think that stuff is too much important. It is to some degree, but the most important part of this is them talking about the lifeblood of their game, the engagement part of it. And the primary metric that they use for this is daily active users. How many players show up every single day? How many players that played last week will come back the next week and win back players who didn't play last week? It could be a 1-week break or a 5-year break, but have returned at a certain point in time. I don't really know what else to say about this because they say that microtransactions are like second to them having player trust. It's just they view it very differently from what I feel like the player perspective is, especially from what I've heard lately. Okay, and then the third metric of this whole success mindset that they've changed to is redefining that they've changed from being a train to a train station. So the box product mindset, what they used to do with like Halo and whatnot, was about building the most impressive, fast, luxurious new train that the world has ever seen. You're poring over the details of the trim in every cabin, the friction on the wheels, everything to make that train amazing, AAA quality. You probably have that intense push at the end of a project, whether it's targeted, crunch, or extra focus, where everyone is thinking about how to get the last few steps to get a gold master, final polished experience. But in live service, you're actually building a train station. The moment that the train has departed, you have another one arriving. In fact, the track needs to be cleared for that next train before the first one even departs. This was the original plan. This is what they rolled with Destiny 1. This is when they were trains. This is the train station. This is what they're doing right now. At any given moment, we have 5 to 6 releases in various stages of development. This has been a dramatic scale up in the schedule complexity year over year with largely the same team. So with the increased complexity, they redefine what success looks like. Success for a great train station means predictability. It means scheduling. I just disagree with this. Like, before we even go into detail on this, when you train like a viewer or a consumer to expect something, they're going to get bored as time goes along. For anything, if you don't change it up, it's going to get stale. They even quoted Miyamoto here. A delayed game is eventually good, but a bad game is forever bad. But once you're in the train station mindset, you have the opposite approach, because a delayed train doesn't just hurt the train, it potentially causes a cascade failure and chaos for the whole train station. It is true to some degree. A bad game can be fixed, but there's a certain point of where it gets to be too bad that it is unfixable, because it would require too many dev resources and too much money that it wouldn't be profitable to fix it. Our seasons in Destiny are the best they've ever been, so are our expansions. And our seasons got there quicker, despite being under much tighter schedule constraints. Do you know why? It's because we're on season number 16 already. This is Game Developer Conference was a while ago. We've been able to iterate so many times as a train passes through that station to get where we are today. But also means to keep the station running, you need to let trains go out the door that carry risk on them that you might not be comfortable with, or that have things you know you could fix if you just backed up the station a few more weeks and did a heroic savings throw on. But we've had to learn not to do that. That only makes things worse. Again, it really depends on what your definition of success here is. If it's really about just keeping trains moving and being consistent, I don't see declining numbers as a success. I just don't. I really wish I had numbers before October 2019, because I would love to do like an actual analytical study. You're either never crunching or you're always crunching. If you're on crunch level effort, you overextend yourself, you burn your stamina bar, unlike big box products where we're all used to building, where you could roll out a release and then go back into a nice relaxing pre-production phase where you can rest up a little bit. In a train station, you're rolling straight into production on another high pressure release. You won't get a chance to recover from that overextension. If you spent an extra week closing that last release, you just lost a week on the current release. And basically, they say that it creates cascading debt. It's like it rolls onto the next release and it's a continual cycle. It leads to always crunching. We haven't perfected this, but I'm talking about the mindset here, that even if you allow a little bit of overextension to creep into your team or your project, it's going to cascade and build release after release. So the reality is that it's a constant ongoing battle, and we won't catch every case on every team. But with each new release, we are constantly proactively identifying the places where teams are overextending themselves, whether through their own passion or through leadership overscoping. But we have to actively help each team member to learn this lesson so that they can ultimately get onto that never crunching path. If there's one thing to take away from this whole thing, it's this. It's this right here. And this is probably where this video is going to start to stretch. The most painful realization about train stations. Remember back when I said box products are in the business of over-delivery? Over-delivery is actually dangerous for a train station. With every release you put out there, you're setting a pattern for your community and for your players. If we release an expansion with 2 raids, the next year folks will be upset if there's only 1 raid. We've hurt the station by making a road decision in that one train. But at the same time, and this is why that lesson is painful, so much of quality and delight in our craft comes from over-delivery, right? From giving folks the stuff above and beyond what they expected. We still want that. We still want to surprise and delight sometimes and overwhelm our players, but we still need to be mindful of the patterns and the implied future commitments we set for ourselves each time. This is tough. And this is the one we're honestly still grappling the hardest with. It's hard to tell a team that has extra cycles and energy to want to do something amazing that would totally be amazing and awesome for the game, to tell them we should not ship this because it is an over-delivery that will set us up for failure on future trains. I got sick to my stomach when I read this. I can see the issue. And I agree. It's the same thing from a content creator's perspective. If I make the best video ever and I put a lot of 100 hours into a video and it does really well, people are going to expect that moving forward. But that doesn't stop me from doing it. In between, I just do things that are like a little bit lower scale because it's more realistic for me and it allows me to refresh myself before I can go all in on that next product. This is a horrible mindset. The whole reason that game studios get to the point that they're at and being very successful in the first place is from over-delivery, in my opinion. You have to blow the socks off of the player for them to become a fan of your studio in a competitive market. Welcome to the world we live in, where you have to perform better than everybody else in order to be able to succeed to the highest excellence. There are people who are just consistent and put out a mediocre product that do well as well, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be as successful and as memorable as the people who go all out. I genuinely cannot believe that they tell their developers, we shouldn't ship this because it is an over delivery that will set us up on failure on future trains, especially when they say they have extra cycles and energy to want to do something amazing. You're literally limiting these people from pushing their limits to want to deliver something amazing because you're afraid of failure in the future. And it's also hella ironic because in one of these previous slides, they said you have to get comfortable with public failure. Knowing that you can push your limits and put out something great, but not choosing to do so because you're afraid of what's going to happen in the future, that is the most toxic mindset you can have as a person. Not even as a company, as a person. I'm trying to understand this as much as possible from their perspective, and I get it. Like, you don't want to set yourself up for failure, but you also don't want to restrict yourself from pushing your limits. Especially when you know you can, and you have people who are very passionate about the game and want to do it. The crazy part is like they talked about how good Forsaken was and what a great turning point was, and the engagement was so good. This was Forsaken. It's kept pretty decent engagement as far as like other games are concerned, but to bring up like my last important point is them talking about player retention. Swinging and doing like innovative new things has always been the reason that Destiny has succeeded, in my opinion, as far as from like a public perspective. Them making the game free to play here, that was great. But then they're like, okay, it's all about player retention. The numbers to me just don't speak retention because for one reason specific. I found these two numbers, the peak player count, and this is me using for the sake of example just the Steam charts, because it's hard to get an accurate population measurement from console. You can do it on warmind.io, but I don't think I can because the API is down. Last I looked, it was about a 1/3 even split for the player population. I know that will fluctuate. So back in Shadowkeep, when they made the game free to play, about 290,000. Same peak in Witch Queen, about 290,000 peak players. The average players for the entirety of the month, Shadowkeep, 165,000. Witch Queen, 75,000. I don't think that this retention strategy that they're claiming to be pushing is working as well as they had hoped. And they need to turn the train around. I don't know, man. Like, I don't really know what else to say about it. Like, Destiny has seen, again, as far as we know numbers-wise, some of the lowest average player month we have ever seen. November 2022. I've never seen sentiment on my YouTube videos, in my Twitch chat. The numbers, population so low. It's just really confusing from my perspective because they said Witch Queen was the most successful Destiny's ever been, and the seasons are the best they've ever been. They had 1 million pre-orders on Witch Queen, which I guess if revenue is success, then it's a success, right? But I can't look at Witch Queen and see 75,000 average players for the whole month, and then look at Shadowkeep, which is over double the player retention for the entire month with the same peak count, and consider Witch Queen more of a success. Nothing in the numbers says that player retention is the best it's ever been. In the Lightfall reveal, when they had talked about how there were 5 million new Guardians in the past year, is what they said. I don't know where their year started. They said there were 5 million new Guardians in a year. How many of those stuck around? How do you have 5 million new players and then proceed to go to the lowest population numbers we've ever seen? If the success is firing on all cylinders and the seasons are the best they've ever been. This isn't me just trying to shit on them. I'd like to make that very clear. I'm just trying to think objectively here. As they've explained in their KPI monitoring and whatnot, vocal sentiment, active player, like they go a lot off of data. The last thing I'll say is like something just needs to change. I don't know what it's gonna take for them to take a step back and realize that the way that things are going is not gonna last forever. And I hope it doesn't have to get to a point of them like the game almost dying and being 5 weeks away from closing down before they'll realize like, oh hey, we need to change stuff. Even when the passion is being expressed as anger or frustration, like anger is not the opposite of loving a game. Loving and hating a game are like 2 degrees off from each other, and they both come from passion, from people who are highly engaged. The opposite of loving a game, the thing that will kill your game, is apathy. Brilliant. Very, very well said. And I'm glad that they realize this. That a lot of the things that are said are not from a place of hatred. It's about people being passionate, wanting it to be the best that it can be, and a lot of players are just frustrated.